Hi, welcome back to Getting Open with me, Andrea Miller. Oh, I am so excited. My guest today is one of the most famous, sought after intuitives. And what's really amazing is her approach to being intuitive is so counterintuitive. She blew my mind, and I'm so excited to share it with you, in part because her approach is so simple. Yes, everybody is intuitive, but how do you tap into that intuition? My guest shows you how. And not only does she show you how, she shares story after story that is going to motivate you to take it to heart, to put it into practice, to transform your life. Whether it's finding or being in a wonderful relationship, having a child, having your dream career, having your dream home, you name it, we cover it all. So let's get into it. My guest is New York Times best-selling author and teacher, Laura Day, who has spent 4 decades using intuition to help individuals, including Hollywood royalty, and billion-dollar companies identify and achieve their goals. Laura is the author of 7 books, including 2 New York Times bestsellers, among them Practical Intuition, The Circle, Welcome to Your Crisis, and How to Rule the World from Your Couch. Her most recent is The Prism, 7 Steps to Heal Your Past and Transform Your Future. It was published this past spring. A sought-after public speaker, Laura has been featured all over the media, including Forbes, The Guardian, New York, Newsweek, Cosmo, and People, and has appeared on CNN, the BBC, Good Morning America, The View, The Oprah Winfrey Show, among many others. Hi, Laura. Welcome to Getting Open.
What a nice intro. I also want to add that, it's harder to change the life of a billionaire or Hollywood royalty than it is someone who's really down and out because they're motivated. I also come on free live almost every morning, not always morning because sometimes I'm in Europe and so it's a different time zone, but I'm in my PJs with lipstick and I work with all of you. And I really think it's Hollywood and big business sells books, but I really want to say that this is for people. And I think we divide our awareness into, oh, well, of course this person can do it, or but no, I rock bottom's a great place to start.
Well, and I've been on your live Instagram. I love it. And we've got the links in the show notes. You can easily follow Laura and it'll just pop up, Laura Day Intuitive. But I want to start by setting the stage. So you're quite private regarding your clients, including, your billionaire corporations. But there are some verified quotes out there that underscore your powers. Nicole Kidman calls you extraordinary. Demi Moore says Laura Day has transformed her own survival into a toolkit for personal growth with an experiential roadmap for healing and integrating all our conflicting parts. I've seen the system laid out in the Prism transform her own life and work, just as it has lifted so many others of us to a new level of joy, self-love, pleasure, and achievement. It's nice to know the Hollywood royalty you're hanging out with are doing the work. And similar praise follows from Brad Pitt, Kerry Russell, Tina Brown, Deepak Chopra, and so many others. And I just have to share this really fun one that I just love from Chris Rock in reference.
That's my favorite quote.
It's so funny. Okay, you guys are going to love this. He says, "How to Rule the World from Your Couch is perhaps the greatest book ever written. Everyone that's ruled the world that has read it and it worked. Bill Gates, George Bush, Oprah. Saddam Hussein didn't read it and was hanged. So if you want to rule the world and not be hanged, read this book." I just think that's so funny.
What a lovely man and what a lovely gift.
Well, and lovely for you, Laura. And I read The Prism and I found it so moving and I loved it. And just how you started, I mean, it gives me chills. Your graciousness and how you are here as somebody who has gone through the ringer, to say the least. And I'd love for you, as we talk today, to talk a little bit about your past. But you went through rock bottom. You went through so many challenges from
rock bottom. It was all up from there.
Well, and you've achieved so much, and you are such a giver, and I just wanted to say that, and so thank you. Starting out of the gate, um, let's talk about the prism. What do you mean by the prism?
So the prism really, my publisher coined it, Julie Grau, and she coined it because when I speak of the prism, I speak of the ego, and the ego has been so maligned. The ego is your I. It's who you are. It is your machine to create in the world. And anything that starts with I is ego. I love, I give, I connect. That's I. So the prism is that structure that is each unique individual that creates our reality. And that structure, what the prism is really about is that our whole life is adapting that structure over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so you talk about and it dawned on me. In fact, I'm just going to put your beautiful book up.
Oh,
and
thanks.
I was looking.
I think they did such a beautiful job on this book.
Well, and I love this. It made sense to me for those of you. Yes, for those of you who are listening, okay, you're going to have to jump over to YouTube because it's all being videoed, and it's so cool. If you open the front and the back jacket, what Laura has done so beautifully.
Oh, it's Spiegel and Grau. It's my wonderful publisher.
What somebody else did so beautifully. Yeah, except for, you talk about the 7 ego centers that reveal how we get stuck in old patterns. And then, you've got them like a prism. I mean, I think it's a beautiful metaphor how a prism refracts white light into 7 colors. And that's what you've done here with red as the your first energy center going up to 7, purple, right? That's how
and it's really
the light refracts
on the age-old system of the chakras, which when I was young, I used to make fun of, those spiritual weird people. But actually, as I really had feedback from thousands of students, I saw that it is true that where our endocrine system is where we create reality. And that light, that one white light that gets refracted into colors is our oneness. Spirituality is regressive. We're already all one. The hard work is creating as individuals, creating our bodies, creating our lives, creating our relationships, creating our wealth, creating our homes, creating our communities. That's the hard work. It's so easy to transcend and go to oneness. That's not our job.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So when it comes to, you were talking about how the human ego gets maligned, but you say it's essential in order for us to thrive. So what should people, like, just to start using the prism, what should people understand about their ego? Should they just be a little more respectful toward it?
No, when you are born, you don't have an I. You are part of, and you see in children's art, until they're about 5, they don't even draw as if they're separate. So until you're about 7, you don't have a fully formed ego. You are one with what's around you. So your formation is based on your beliefs, taken from your caretakers, your experiences, as supported or not through your caretakers. You didn't have the intellect to say, oh, this is why, or this makes sense. You created a whole operating system based on what you were given in a very small pool of information. So, for example, if at a very crucial time your mother left to have another child and you weren't cared for adequately or prepared adequately, one of your facts may be that other people are threats to my love and comfort. And you make these ideas that run your life. That's your ego. Now, after you are set by age 7. That is who you are. The rest is revision, because now at age 7, you have the beginnings of intellect. So you can say, oh, wait, that's not right, or that doesn't make sense. Or when I did this based on a prior belief, I didn't get the result I was looking for. And the more information we have, the more we can change that operating system. who you are creates your world. That doesn't mean if you have a bad life, you're bad. It means your operating system either doesn't suit your current circumstances and you weren't given a foundation to adapt it, or that you were injured at a crucial stage of development and it's out of your perception how to create what it is that you want or long for or need in your life. And that's what the Prism is about. It really is. If this is missing, go to this area, and you don't have to understand the past. And please remind me to explain why. You simply have to do a tiny thing differently. Because when you do something differently, you encounter something different, and that changes you. It's from outside of self. Okay?
When I interviewed you last time, you clarified that, and it kind of blew my mind. So I want to stick there, and then we'll come back to.
Want to stick there. What I was asking you to remind you about is that, we're taught that if we look deeply inside, we can make change. But if the answer were inside of you and accessible, you would have solved the problem. It's not. And so we work really hard and we don't get results because we're misled. You are a closed system. You can't fix a broken system with a broken tool. You don't have any perspective. The reason I write books like The Prism, Self-Help, and the reason that I think intuition is so important is you need a catalyst, something outside of you that goes, oh, look at that. And that's also why people, when they go on vacation, for example, to somewhere brand new, and their old reality isn't held in place by their habits, they have a little window of opportunity where something new can come in. And if they don't avoid it, because we habitually, we find what we're looking for, we don't see what we don't see. But if you go with an attitude of openness, sometimes you can use that little window before you've created your system in this new place to make change.
Yeah, that was so revelatory to me because I was of that opinion. It's like, if you look in enough, you'll find it. And this idea that something outside of you is a catalyst is a radical departure from that perspective. So how do you, so say you're stuck, say whether you're at rock bottom or just your garden variety stuckness, how do you call in that catalyst to help you unlock your intuition?
Don't call it in.
I'm asking the wrong question. Okay.
No. I'm argumentative.
Yeah.
It's my
No, that's good.
My greatest fault. But once you call it in, it becomes a part of you. You adapt it to your old system. I always tell people when you're doing work, find something that's safe but doesn't resonate. Because if it resonates with you that created the problem. What you need is to try on something from someone who's done it successfully and expect results. If you don't get results in a few days, and I'll explain what the dynamic is, then you need to try on something different. We tend to get stuck. I once saw a healer speak to a diabetic. It was these chiropractors who did hands-on healing, and the healing was lovely, but their message was scary. And the diabetic said, well, I'm not healing. And they said, are you still taking your insulin? And she said, yes. And he said, well, then you don't believe enough. That's why it's not working. And I'm a doctor's daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter. I went to her after and I said, if you stop taking your insulin, it's called a corpse. There's a reason you have it. You're taking insulin. And if the healing works, if you have to believe in it for it to work, your belief works, the healing doesn't. Keep getting bloods and maybe you'll need less insulin with a healing. You take good care. Don't make risk. And we magicalize a lot. The reality is if something is working, you can prove it. So what I do in the Prism was really given to me intuitively to save my own life. But what I do in the Prism is I have you identify, okay, this is what's missing. This is the ego center. This is the part of me that either hasn't adapted or is too injured to create it. And then they're both questions and assertions, not affirmations, because affirmations, if your subconscious doesn't believe it, they're not going to do anything for you. They're assertions. You don't chant them. You practice them. For example, if you've really, often I see a lot that people find that they're blindsided by things. And then they get down on themselves and compound the problem by saying, oh, how didn't I see this? How did I miss it? Well, that's 6 ego center. It's observation, intellect, and intuition. And by the way, it has to develop that way. It has to develop first by observing, then by using intellect to put together what you observe. And this is all before age 7. And then intuition meets it. That extra information you need comes through seemingly from nowhere. If you have intuition first, it's a damage response. But so you go to a daily assertion and you find what doesn't resonate. So,
I love it. You go to a daily assertion and find what doesn't resonate.
If it resonates again, that's the old you.
I love that. That is so counterintuitive. So good.
It is, and so, for example, someone says, "Oh, you're doing everything wrong." So, for example, when I was looking for love, everyone would say, "Oh, you can't. It's not there." Blah blah blah. I would have used, "I am developing my own unique formula for peace of mind." So I didn't say, "Oh, they're not true. They're not this. They're not that." I just decided I want love. That's my goal. I'm going to make contact. And so I asked my girlfriends to set me up. I said hello to people. I got over my innate shyness and total uptightness. And I used my own, unique formula to give myself peace of mind. And I've been married for 14 years to the man of my dreams, the first man who has gainful employment I've ever been with. It really, and it didn't resonate with me because I thought, I don't know what my unique peace of mind. I don't want peace of mind. I want fun. I want this. I want that. But when I actually tried peace of mind, I found that it opened up so many possibilities that my anxiety had clouded.
Oh, I love that. I have recently been saying peace of mind is underrated. And so I can relate to that. Will you tell the story?
Like my husband's a denial type. He goes away from really important information he needs. That wouldn't work for him. He needs to notice. He needs to tolerate anxiety. He needs something else. It's a different ego center. He needs third ego center, which is your drive, your ability to, compete. And, he manifests well, but he gets screwed more than I do. And he gets screwed more than I do because he's like, instead of saying like I do, "Oh my God, there's an elephant. Do we have an elephant gun? Where do I get one?" Or the elephant's going to sit on me. He goes, "Oh no, there's no elephant. I'm fine." Yeah. And
That's
then
so funny.
Sits on it. So, we all need, here's the thing, one size doesn't fit all, but one thing there are things that are true of every human machine. And we are machines. We're spiritual machines, but we're also machines. We have an operating manual. That's the Prism. We operate in an environment. That's our world. We have a map. That's intuition, not experience. Experience is a map of where you've been. Intuition is a map of the future and the present. And awareness is a map of the present. So it is ADD in action. Totally lost my train of thought.
No, it's beautiful. Hang on real quick. How did you meet Stephen?
So I was 50 years old. And everybody said, "Oh, here are the statistics. Women over 50, blah, blah, blah." Someone had really done something not nice to me, and it was all over the internet. So thankfully I didn't see the internet, but I would have dated me. And I said, "Well, that may all be true. However, I am developing my own unique formula for peace of mind. 6 ego center is my most challenged, and I can speak about that later." So I decided that, I am too damaged I have found people who really did not treat me as well as I should have been treated, and where I took on a lot more. And based on my history with my parents, I found people who were like my parents. And so I thought, well, all of this may be true. However, that's my goal. My goal is to be, I want my person. I'm not going to be unhappy till I find them, although I was. But I want my person, and I'm going to just kind of move ahead. So I really use this in a way without knowing it. I use the predecessor of this called the circle. That was my goal. And so I noticed the synchronicities that came up. So one was that my girlfriends rallied around me. Well, I looked at my girlfriends and I said, I don't choose so well. You've had a 20-year marriage. Could you, if you see anyone right for me, could you set me up? What I also did was I stopped doing what I normally do, which is when someone's interested in me, out of politeness, I go out on a date, I do whatever. Or if I'm interested in them, I get obsessed. I didn't allow any of that. If I was obsessed, I just went to the gym and worked out. Or read a book or used self-discipline, which I'm not as good at. And
we need to do a whole show on dating. Oh my God, this is all gold. Keep going.
Two of my girlfriends set me up with men. And on some level, they were not interesting to me. They were employed, boring. They had no deep-seated rage. No addictions, no violence.
Oh my God.
There was no hook. And
I love it. Not dangerous enough.
But I let catalysts come in because I knew you can't change without a catalyst. So the catalyst was I asked people, like, what are your rules for me? One rule was you have to see the person 3 times. If you can stomach it, you have to have one kiss.
Wow! Oh my God, my mind is blown right now, Laura. You've got a whole new future as like this epic dating guru. But keep going.
So I did that, and with my husband, I met him, and he was not.
And by the way, how long were you in this process before you met Stephen?
I was almost 2 years. And I dated a lot of people who weren't psychopaths, so weren't interesting. But and I also had a child at home, so a teenager. So it was I didn't have a lot of freedom really, and I certainly wasn't going to bring someone home, or there was all this other stuff going on, as there always is. So my husband was a bit of a wolf. First day, I email my friend. I said, I'm not really interested. She says, remember the 3-date rule. So I did a second date. And he put his hand on my leg. I removed his hand from my leg. It was like, I was a real little prude. But I owed him a 3rd date. And the 3rd date, I don't know what this show is rated, so I'm not going to say.
Oh, it's rated whatever you want to rate it.
But I did my one kiss, and I really didn't want to. I mean, he was a perfectly nice man, but at that point, I knew I wasn't going to date him, so my guard was down because he was in like male girlfriend territory, even though he was very straight. And I kissed him, and the rest is history.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. You didn't want to kiss him, and it just the chemistry was there.
It was like my boundaries, came down, and we wake up in the morning and we look at each other and we say the same thing. Thank you, whatever difficulty, whatever challenges, thank you to whatever got us here. Because we both feel, so really lucky to have what we call our person. And he is my favorite person to spend time with. And, because at 50, you don't need a father for your children. I mean, my son was old enough to be a father on his own. You don't need, I'd made my money, I'd done my stuff. And in a way you think, oh, that makes it easier. It doesn't. It makes it harder because you don't really need anything.
Well, it sets a bar higher in a lot of ways, right?
But also you're very set in your ways. I mean, need is a wonderful thing. Hunger is a wonderful thing. And when your only hunger is intimacy, often you don't realize how you block it because you don't need other things. So the willingness to compromise, which all relationships take, isn't there. So anyway, the rest is history. And I was never going to get married again. But of course, he proposed. And
How
I
long were you
did
dating before he proposed?
not even 2 years. I mean, actually, 2 weeks. I said no. And then,
I love
and
this
then,
guy.
and then 2 years. And I knew because he had all of these rings up on his screen and he'd left it open synchronistically. I looked at it and I said, you know what? I'm 50 and I don't wear jewelry. Like I like jewelry I can lose and not cry about. So I said, do not buy me a ring. And he said, can I still ask you to marry? I said, yeah, we'll see. And we were in my little apartment in Italy that I've had since I was 23. And through the house in the morning, because he wakes up hours after I do, there was a circular cookie that said, ring, will you marry me? There was a stain from a coffee cup in a ring, will you marry? I mean, it was the most romantic, sweetest thing. And, listen, relationships are negotiations. And really, that's what the prism is about. You have different prisms. And in a way, the relationship is a whole structure of its own. And so we negotiated. My husband's an extrovert. He would have had a 600-person wedding. I'm like, no. If you're going to make a spectacle of me, I'm not going to marry you. I'm going to marry you in your favorite dress of mine, in my kitchen with our kids, married by a friend. And that's what we did. So, and I also wanted to get married in our kitchen because I really wasn't, I had the longest divorce in history. And I was like, I don't know that I want to do this again. And I just wanted to give myself also an out. The minute I said I do, I burst into tears because all of a sudden I realized what I hadn't completely made conscious before, which was this: other than having my son, that was the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. I thought, wow, how is it possible that this amazing person is my person? Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to club each other to death half the time. I mean, relationships are constant contracts, negotiation, renegotiation. But we are so, if we club each other to death, we'll do it at the same time because we're going together. I mean, and that is, I used my system, the circle, which was the predecessor to the prism. The circle really should have come after the prism. The reason I wrote the prism was that people really needed more detail about what they were doing. The circle puts you on automatic pilot. You pick a goal. And I want to talk about goals, so remind me. But the prism says, pick your 3 goals, which end up under one umbrella because you're one person. Pick your 3 goals. But here's a tiny thing to make it happen right away, or at least a piece of it. Do it and notice what happens. And if it doesn't work, do something else.
But what do you mean? Because if, let's say your goal is, if it's a pretty large goal, then it's going to take some time to get there.
Give me a large goal.
1 million followers on social media. And I have
you need 1 viral video.
That's true.
You need 5
That's
influencers whose followers actually follow through, who post you. A miracle takes a minute. We magicalize these things. I had a student who was really obese and had been since birth. And her goal was to reach a certain weight. But she also had literally, I know some people, it's just biological with her. She also had no self-control. She was this wonderful sensualist. She could sit down with a gallon of ice cream and a spoon. It was kind of beautiful to watch for someone like me who's not sensual about food, but it was killing her. And that was her goal. It happened immediately in the weirdest way.
Hang on. It was her goal what?
Her goal was to get to a certain weight. She had a gallbladder attack 2 days later, and she couldn't have any fat. And so no ice cream, no full fat dairy, nothing, no cheese, no hamburger, like nothing. She lost all of the weight she wanted to lose so quickly. And the interesting thing is, because we're a system, she had never had a partner. Because we're a system, because she felt better about herself, she'd reached her goal without her even realizing it. A wonderful partner came into her life. The story has a funny ending, but
Tell us.
Okay, she actually realized that she liked her body. She never gained the weight back, but she realized that she didn't want a partner living with her. That she liked her privacy. She liked her friends. She liked her concept of partner was not what she thought it was. So after trying out having a partner living with her, she moved him out and they became friends. I didn't ask if it was with benefits, but they became very dear friends. Like what she realized, and often the interesting thing and how the Prism also works, people say, how do I know my goals? You don't. A lot of your goals are based on what your first 7 years were, that you may start building them and get pieces of them and realize that, oh, wow, this isn't my goal. I thought a certain amount of notoriety was my goal. But when I wrote my first book, and when all of a sudden I became very recognizable and everyone wanted me to be a keynote speaker, I'm an introvert. I found it overwhelming. And I revised my goal. My goal was to be able to do things that have meaning to me, make enough income to stay at home and have kind of a wonderful enclosed life. Now that goal has changed also because, of course, the being in the world, being a New York Times bestselling author, having all the publicity I got, did slowly at a pace that was okay, bring me into the world. But I chose how. I do workshops that are manageable sizes. I started out with workshops with thousands and it was like, not me. I answer all my own emails. I don't have an assistant do that. Like I keep it intimate and delicious in a way that I love it. So in the Prism, the way you start is you pick 3 goals. Why goals? Anything that happens to you and the way you perceive your reality is framed by those goals. It's organized by those goals. You want a positive organization. You don't want it organized by your trauma. You go on Instagram, every single therapist who's been out of school for 20 minutes, and a lot of people who are not accredited, they want to help you look at your trauma. Research shows that revisiting your trauma re-traumatizes. It's not that you repress it, because what you repress has power over you, drives you. But when you go forward to a new goal, the first guest at that party is going to be your trauma. But your trauma becomes an obstacle on your way to your goal. It doesn't become a place you live or where you've been so damaged you can't have what you want. There's so many fallacies. Like you have to believe in yourself. You don't have to believe in yourself. And why would you believe in yourself without evidence? No, you have to put one foot in front of the other, get tools, notice that you are creating what you wanted. If not, get other tools. And you'll believe because you will have created what you want. The other thing is that you have to be worthy. Who exactly? I mean, look around you, folks. There are plenty of unworthy, evil, horrible people who still have achieved what they want. Now, I would conjecture that they will become ill, or there are things that they're still not happy with it or whatever. But plenty of unworthy people who get exactly what they think they want. Worthiness, you don't have to be worthy. You learn, you're a work in progress. You can't do A, B, or C yet. You're not that person yet. I'm sure all of us, especially when you get to be my age, can look back and say, ooh, I would not have wanted to meet me at 25 in a dark alley, or wow, I feel badly about the person I was. And let me remind myself to learn from that. And when possible, maybe even to apologize, because bringing something full circle can often be very healing. The courage not to repress, but again, to act slightly differently. Going back to the incidents or people, situations that harmed you is like going to a dry well to drink. it's not there. It's in creating for yourself what you want in your life, not for yourself, creating with the world. The contact boundary between self and world is what the prism is about. Do something, a teeny little something differently in the world, and your world will change. Studies show we find what we're looking for and we don't see what we don't see. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I've got I have a bunch of things, but let's see, in the chapter, time and how to work with it, I love how you talk about allow and notice versus searching and imagining.
Imagining is based on history. It doesn't give you new information.
Yeah, you say you're searching in the places you already know, which I love. So talk more about the allowing okay, well, let me actually add this. Intuition and allowing open new receptors for possibilities you may not know about. I love that. So now it's your book. You talk about it.
So when people creatively visualize, all they're doing is bringing past things or imaginary things based on past things, because it's all things they've been exposed to, and trying to rearrange the pieces. And creativity is a really beautiful process, but it's not always a constructive process. Allowing is, so a creativity, what would that be? Okay, I want to be in love. And I'm imagining 6 foot tall. He's a banker. He wants to have 3 children. He wants to live in the suburb. That's imagining. That's based on an old you. Allowing is experiencing yourself and experiencing where you hold the desire, and then noticing what moves you. Just noticing in the moment. Everybody do this now. What's a wish? Make a wish. And don't imagine it. Just notice. So don't close your eyes, don't go zen. Life is lived fully alert. Okay. That's another piece of misinformation, that we need to reach some state. No, your state is here and now, fully alive.
With your eyes open, goddammit. That's what I say.
So let's say let's say my goal, I want to add an apartment to my apartment in New York. Let's say my goal is to, expand my space in a really wonderful way. And so I can imagine how that would happen, but I can also allow the experience. So allow the experience of the room, allow the experience of expansion, not look for it, just simply allow it. And make that a practice, not in a moment, because by the way, your habits, you do them all the time. Your practices you need to do consistently and frequently too. So, I expand the space in my chair. I've got a lot of stuff around me. I've got this, that, and this. So maybe I clear some space in my chair. I maybe wear some roomier clothes, not so tight. Like, I really allow myself in the moment and in all moments an experience of more space. And it shifts the energy, and it opens new possibilities. And that actually has been proven. I mean, a lot of what was believed in the early 80s, when I was first a test subject for experiments on extrasensory perception, now has been proven, because we have the instrumentation to notice that the human brain reacts before a computer randomly generates a violent picture. We can really say, oh, yeah, okay, now we can prove this. So I totally lost my train of thought, ADD.
Well, I want to come back to the allowing thing. And let me ask you this. I feel like, this is so resonant for me as somebody who has been such a doer and driver, and so in my masculine energy, pushing. When you think allowing, do you think it's...
allowing is not pushing. Allowing is pushing.
So it's not necessarily more feminine or masculine energy. No. It's just, okay.
Allowing is dealing with reality and pushing where you are right now. It's very important to do. That's very important. Much more important than experiencing or feeling, because doing creates a different result. Looking at a can opener is not going to open the can. Picking it up, if you don't know how to use it, finding the instructions to use it and then applying that to the can will open the can. And so It's really, deep understanding and experiencing is highly overrated. Do something different, you will have a different experience. But what mindfulness does, and mindfulness isn't meditation, mindfulness is being fully present in the moment. What awareness does in the moment, what allowing does, is it brings your time zone to the here and now. In the here and now, intuition will show you the future, and you will be focused enough on the here and now to perceive it. Your ability to make changes, to adapt your history to what's needed in your present, to sort through what's necessary and what's not. Just like when we don't eat even healthy food, you excrete what you can't use. And that's really what you do with your past. You need to be the hero of your own story. Don't make the villain the hero. Don't make the villain so big that you're nobody in your story. And that happens all the time. I see that in reader emails, in student emails. They were abused, they were harmed, they were this. Yeah, absolutely. You are the hero, though. You are writing the email. You survived. What do you want to do with that? And we tend to give that power away because we feel powerless. And those, injuries are often best healed by having repetitive positive experiences, but that is in the moment. It's not in the future, it's not in the past, it's now. So awareness is mindfulness. It's about now. When people say, well, I don't know, what's my purpose? I don't know. What's your purpose right now? Could be cleaning your sock drawer. Start there. Start with what's in front of you, and then it will get bigger. If you want to be more comfortable, happier in your life, start with changing your position in your chair so you're more better. Like we remove it by so many steps. And that is it just avoids us. The time zone to put your energy is now. Now, there are many different time zones, but the one where you make change, where you change your future, where you put new context to your past so it's useful, and where you actually enjoy is in the present.
Okay, hang on. I've got a couple questions on that. So you talk about reality when addressed can be humbling. When you were talking about the big financial problem you had like 30 years ago, you say commit to the present fully and with no soft landing, no half measures, no avoidance. You create an opening for immediate dramatic miracles. What happened?
I had I had left my husband pregnant. I had realized that.
You left your husband pregnant? Yeah. You get pregnant, just kidding.
So I realized, and my son's now 33, so that was a long time ago. But I realized that for reasons I won't, for his privacy now.
Sure, of course.
I realized that there was no way I could raise, that I couldn't share home, that was not going to be healthy for me or the baby. But I had met him when I was 16 and I was 32. So he had become part of my habit. It took a catalyst, being pregnant, having to protect another person, for me to say, oh, wow, this is not going to work. And God, I wish I'd realized that a few months ago. So I left pregnant. I did not have money. I think I felt like he was pretty committed to destroy me. And it was really, it was like many times it was a mixed time because of course, I gave birth to this miraculous light, but I really was in dire straits. And of course I didn't realize that with a child, someone can attack you legally, especially if they have money and you don't, and you are done for. And I was so anxious that I used to think, how can my heart keep beating with this amount of anxiety? Like, how physically can this happen? And actually, the circle was the system I used, which I had been using, which is really, in a sense, part of the Prism. And I set a goal, and the goal was to be a full-time stay-at-home mother with my child, for my child, which I didn't say my goal is to make money or my goal is to win my divorce. That was my goal. I just wanted to be there for my child. I didn't realize it was a boy yet. And all of the sudden, these things happened. For example, I was sitting and it didn't happen in a second, but someone offered me their apartment, someone who's still a friend of mine. So I lived in their apartment. I'd never had to like depend on the kindness of strangers. I was so embarrassed that I actually, even though this person gave me their whole apartment, I slept on a futon in the living room with my baby because I was just so embarrassed. Like I didn't feel like I could take this gift. I, lived on souvlaki, which was cheap and lots of calories, and had my baby. And we lived like that for the first year. And then I was in a play space and I was a research subject for experiments on extrasensory perception. And I realized that intuition can give you those immediate life-saving answers. So I was doing my own process on myself while my son was like eating sand at an indoor play space in Manhattan. And this woman came up to me and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And, our children were eating sand together, our babies. And I said, "Oh, I like didn't even have any game at that point. I was so exhausted and upset." And I said, "I'm trying to solve my life. And I'm using something that I've used to help other people and to help me." And she said, "Oh, let me see." And I said, "No, you couldn't even read my writing. I'm like 3 generations of doctors. My writing's hieroglyphics and it's all a mess. I don't even know what I'm doing." She said, "Let me see." And I did. And she said, "This is a bestseller." I said, "No, it isn't." She said, "I, not to brag, am a top book agent. This is a bestseller." She sold it in weeks with one of the largest advances ever paid to a first-time author. It was an instant New York Times bestseller to a large degree, thanks to Oprah and Demi Moore. And I got to stay at home and I got $3 million for my next 2 books. And before this book had even been in print for more than a breath. And I could pay my lawyer, pay my son's, private school when he was old. I mean, it just solved while staying at home. It did my wish. Now, at the time, I thought, I could win a lottery. Someone out of the blue that I didn't know about could leave me million. Because I had no confidence in myself. I didn't really think there was anything worthwhile in me that could support myself or my son. But so that's what happened. And it became my first book, Practical Intuition. And now intuition's part of our lexicon. But in 1995 or 96, when that book came out, intuitives were people who lived in 5th floor walk-ups that smelled like cat pee with 5 of their closest cats living on chocolate and big purple moo-moos with a crystal ball. I mean, these were not functional people. And I was the first person who came from science where there had been proof of these abilities and said, "You know what, you want to experience your past lives or your dead people, go right ahead. I'm having enough trouble with this life and returning my phone calls," because in those days we didn't have messages or texts. We had answering machines. So it was really it was and it also was a way. I had always been very private about my work, my intuitive work. And I call it my work, but I didn't really demand payment for it even. I didn't need to until that time. And I'd always been very private because I was a little ashamed about this weird thing I did. But all of a sudden it got also recontextualized because it was practical intuition. It was facts, data, not drink more water, open your heart to love. It was in 2 months, the market's going to crash. It was like things you could prove or disprove. So it didn't cross the crazy line or the weirdo line. I mean, still maybe the weirdo line, but not the crazy line. And I really enjoy, that was so, it really has given me the life I have today.
Oh my God, I have a million questions from that, but I want to start with what I think everybody's on the edge of their seat. Like, oh, okay. How can we practically tap into that intuition? So can you talk us through that? And then I want to come back to that story, but let's one thing at a time.
You're always tapped into your intuition, but intuition really responds to targets or goals or worries. So one of the things, let me take you through the beginning of this. one of the things you need are goals. So, after you get off of this program, write down the 3 most important goals, and you can change your goals. So those of you who are anxiety types, don't worry. What do you want right now in your life? Like if I could wiggle my nose or snap my fingers, what do you want? Write that down as if it, as a reality. I'm in love. I've expanded my space. I'm in love with a wonderful person who loves me. Be careful how you can work on your goals. They evolve with you. But write down 3 goals. The minute you've written down a goal and you really commit to them, doesn't mean you have to believe in them or feel good about them or whatever, but you commit to them. What you'll notice is synchronistically pieces of those goals come into your life. Also the obstacles. Intuition can help find you your next disaster as easily as your next chance to do something wonderful. But here you've directed your intellect, your emotions, your intuition toward these 3 commitments. Then you notice and look for new information. What do I mean by look for? We've already talked about notice, but look for means, okay, my goal is to have enough wealth to live an easy life. I don't even know the first thing about finances. I actually got hit with a tax bill that I wasn't expecting. Let me do a YouTube or 2 on what are taxes. What is there a way to fight a IRS tax bill? Let me inform myself. Let me bring in catalysts, not from what I already know or the people who are already around me, because that certainly didn't work. Let me find something new. That's why I write self-help. You would also go to the first ego center in the Prism, which is really about your safety, your foundation, your power in the world. Wealth is power. Beauty is power. So, anything that you can use as a currency to get what you want and need is power. So you go to the first ego center and you do something different. So one of the things at the first ego center is no new damage. So you'd practice that.
And Hippocratic oath here.
Right, but so all of a sudden you notice, oh, wow, this friend who I really love, every time I speak to her, I feel worse. That's new damage. You'd notice that when you have 3 cups of coffee, you get too anxious to do anything. That's new damage. So you begin to notice new damage. And in noticing it, that 3rd cup of coffee, it's not something you even want anymore because you don't want to feel that way. And you've made, neurons that fire together, wire together, Hebb's axiom. You begin to make new connections to replace those old ones. And what happens is that in doing that, your life changes. So you're not having the 3rd cup of coffee, but you're getting sleepy. So you go outside of your apartment building, walk around the block as a work break. You bump in to a neighbor, and the neighbor just started a new business and really needs help 2 hours a day at $50 an hour. Wow. And so you say, fine. And then you meet all these blah, 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 so on and so on and so on and so on. Listen, the woman who introduced me to my husband, I met because she was producing the 2nd hour of Good Morning America, and Demi was teaching Barbara Walters to do a striptease for the movie Striptease. So 20 odd years later,
that's amazing.
She introduced me to my husband.
That's amazing.
So it's really the synchronicities are incredible, and I think there's so many studies that prove the existence of frequency. But here's one of my favorites. And of course, be wary of your studies, because a study with 10 people is not a study. That's BS.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But a robust study with enough people to make it significant demonstrated that if your friend's friend is happy, you have a significantly higher degree of happiness. So being connected to not even happy people, but happy people or people who are connected to happy people, even 3 degrees removed, that frequency increases your happiness statistically. It was ridiculous, like 50%. I forget the exact statistic, but some ridiculous percentage. The same was not true of unhappiness, because a lot of the time we engage with unhappy people in a way that gives us a sense of generosity and purpose. So I think that the reason that didn't, people associated with unhappy people didn't increase your unhappiness.
Okay.
Is that often you were purposeful, they were purposeful. But isn't that interesting? A friend of a friend of a friend, that happiness really has a direct pathway. And if you also look at the research, happier people, which often is, correlated with purpose and with connection, happier people have more success, have more health, have lower mortality. They create neurotransmitters without psych meds, endogenous ones just in their own bodies. Their neurology is different. Happier people are healthier, are wealthier, do more in the world, tend to have better love outcomes. It really makes a difference. We are a vibrational world. Your heart creates a vibration that extends outside of your body. We are interfacing with the world all the time. What the Prism teaches you is how to interface in a way that maybe you weren't taught.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny change, even if you don't understand it, as long as it's safe, make a tiny change and then notice what happens. And that will snowball.
Okay, so let me summarize. So you start with your 3 goals. You notice and look for.
You don't look for, you notice.
Okay.
You do look for tools, however.
Look for tools. Okay.
Those goals. What can you do that doesn't resonate with you, that's different, that's outside your pattern and awareness? You try it out, you verify results. And I recommend keeping a record of it, because 2020 hindsight is not accurate.
Oh, no kidding. That's a fact. Mm-hmm.
You don't get trapped in your old experiences, your old beliefs, and you don't get trapped in those kind of debates that we all have with our people around us in history and past. Fine, your sister's not nice, your mother was a narcissist and still, whatever. Your goal are your goals. That's what you're working on. And you deal with the rest in whatever way you need to deal with them. You find what your obstacle is, and you go to that ego center. And even without reading the whole chapter, you practice one assertion for 3 days. Don't chant it, practice it. It sounds like a mantra, but it's not. It's a practice.
Okay, hang on. What do you mean by you find your obstacle? So let's say, using your example, you want to expand your apartment. How do you map your
maybe
the obstacle is
there's no you're thinking again, not intuitive, and you're not
okay.
What it is. So there was an apartment next to me that came free. It was massively overpriced, and it wasn't really very nice. I made a fair offer on it. I don't know that they'll accept it. And there's an apartment above, a below, to the side. Who knows? What I do know is that I need to expand my space in every way. So, for example, I'm an over planner. So a month before we leave, I'm packed. I know where we're going to be every day. I've made my appointments. I've made my dinner.
I want to travel with you because I'm a total under planner.
That's what I'm becoming now. I decided
you travel with me. Nothing is planned. It's all spontaneous.
Space in my life. So what did I do? 2 days before the last time I went to Europe, I turned to my husband and I said, we're going to Europe day after tomorrow. I'd found these low mileage tickets, and he looked at me and he's like, who are you? Who has body snatched my wife? I mean, I won't even go to dinner at the last minute. I'm not that person. I cannot tell you the ways that my life and relationships, even the publicity for my book, how everything opened up just by breaking that habit. But I didn't do it once. When someone invited me at the last minute, I never do last minute things. I would say yes. If a bus didn't come, I'm pretty rigid. I wouldn't wait for the next bus. I'd walk or take a cab or take a train. Like I made space. I went from, my husband likes very tight clothes. I'm very lucky that at 66, he still likes me in tight clothes. But I actually started when I wasn't going out to dinner with him during the day, wearing looser clothes, like having space or tight clothes that had stretch. I stopped snacking before dinner. I often ruin my dinner. I made space in my stomach, quite literally. Had to deal with the hunger, but I made the space. And in dealing with the hunger, I had to deal with my natural irritability, my hangriness. That also really helped my interpersonal relationships. So this tiny little thing, when I practiced it rigorously in my life, one little change, make space, and interpret it in a million different ways, made such a difference in my life. And I'm leaving for the UK again in a few weeks. Yes, I have made my tickets, but I don't know what I'm going to do after that week in the UK. Maybe France, maybe Italy, maybe more UK, maybe some country I've never been to. I don't know.
Well, honestly, Laura, it is remarkable when I think about the two major stories of your life. There are so many, but when I think about what you shared today in terms of finding your person, that is a story that I think just speaks for your process. And then, like you described when you wrote your first book, Practical Intuition, how your methodology, as simple as it sounds, I think there's probably a lot of people like, what, could it be that simple? And what you're showing, it is that, like, I'm sitting here like, wait, what? It's that simple.
It is that simple. And as a human being, in all of our complexity and divine feelings and sensitivity, no change ever feels simple, no matter how simple it was. I mean, that moment where I really met this extraordinary man, it still wasn't simple. We both had beautiful apartments. Whose do we live in? Mine. We both had a lot of stuff. Who gets the closet space? Him. We have two big careers. Now, I've always been the breadwinner. Oh my God. The first time my husband looked at me and said, I'm going to get you a great apartment I just got a super job in London. I was like, I have a great apartment. Like, I have commitments. We're two alphas with two big careers and two big lives. And it is, as even though everything is wonderful and our life has been really a series of conquests and fun work, it's not easy. None of it's easy.
No, well, and I'd love for you to go back. I wrote down, you talked about the Prism. You said it was given intuitively to save your life. Will you talk about that?
When I was 5.5 years old, when I was 5, my mother gave birth to another child. She had 4 children born in 4.5 years. So when I was 4.5, my baby sister was born and she was the 4th. My mother was very depressed. She was bipolar 1. I was first 3 months of her pregnancy with me. She was taking Thorazine, and I was. My parents and grandparents, in their wisdom, decided that putting 4 children under the age of 5 alone at night in an apartment next door that was not connected was wise. So,
was there a nanny?
No, there were 4 children under the age of 5, and I was the oldest.
Wow.
And when you're a child, you don't say, oh, this is strange or whatever. This is just your life. And the Prism, this operating system that was so many decades more mature than I was, it was almost like someone came into me and drove my car. It's not that I knew how to heat a bottle on the stove. It's that something came into me and did it for me. It's not that and probably imperfectly, I probably burned her a million times. someone, I certainly burned myself. Something came into me and showed me how it was done, not in a way I remembered, but it kind of came through me. And it continued to, out of need. I mean, we often develop our gifts out of need. It continued to throughout my life. So even though my upbringing had me make some troublesome choices, I always landed in a better place because of the prism. So while I was making trouble for myself, beneath it all, this other life and wealth and friends and notoriety, all these things were being built. The prism was given to me, but didn't become really conscious until I said, wait a sec, why is everyone in my family killing themselves? And I have this amazing life. Like, why? And when you ask a question, you get information. And I became aware of this that intuitively had been given to me from that energy we all share, spirit, whatever you want to call it. And I wrote it down. And that's what this is. And then I did it for over a decade with my thousands of students who come onto my Instagrams. COVID happened, and I would do Zooms where 1,000 people would come onto a Zoom. I had to get a new Zoom plan to accommodate 1,000 people.
Nice.
I limited it at 1,000 because I realized 1,000 is the number I can see at once, and then people just become a mass. And although I would never do a 1,000-person workshop again, so I had synchronistically thousands of people to test what had said wrong. So as I put it down, I tested it out, and I tested it out for over a decade, so that it got refined into a very precise system. You need cash, do this. You want love, do that. You want to know what someone else wants? Here's the way to engage intuition to notice what part of their prism is hungry, and how to fill it. And in here is also why people might have gotten damaged, where your trauma might be. But I did that because at 66, my students are now teachers. So I have to write something that it's also a textbook. But that's not how the everyday person needs to use it. You can go right back to the assertions or the questions, and you live them for a couple of days, and you should begin to get both the opportunities and obstacles to create what you want.
Yeah, I love it so much. I mean, it's so practical, and it's so helpful to hear you talk through it. Let me ask you this. So you consult to billion-dollar corporations. Am I allowed to say how much you charge per hour?
You can.
You charge $15,000 per hour. What are you telling these CEOs? I mean, that is
my day job is to predict the future for these large companies. And I've had two of the same companies for 30 years. And I've onloaded in the last couple of years too, because my CEOs retire and I don't want to predict their golf game. They can always call me for these. We formed relationships, but I don't want to. I don't want to be. I'm going to tell you past, present, and future.
Right.
So I predict the future, and I make them a lot of money, and I'm actually the smallest charge on their balance sheets. These are multi-billion-dollar companies. It allows me to write books, which don't make money. And it allows me to have workshops. It allows me to go on for free every day. It allows me to live far more wonderfully than anyone has a right to live, really. But I'm doing it anyway. It allows me to donate to things I believe in. And it allows me to be a useful part of my community. And I really do. I mean, I don't read civilian, so I don't take personal civilian clients, even if they pay me $15,000. But I do share my intuition as I train people as intuitives in boot camp. And people tend to take boot camp over and over, and then they have a group of intuitives, and they themselves have intuition to offer, which I really love. I mean, I don't have another boot camp till the end of 2026, which I'm going to miss, but I'm
Oh,
working.
wow.
I
Okay.
love this book and I want to teach this book. I wanted to give myself time, and boot camp is a full-on commitment.
How long is the program?
It's forever really, because it's 4 hours over a couple months, over 4 days, each day 4 hours. But there's homework, there's after work. I'm engaged in the community forever. I'm still, and then I have socials. So I have boot campers who are in boot camps 35 years ago who at a social come to my house and meet boot camps who are new boot campers who've took
No,
boot
that's so
camp
cool.
last year. And when I'm in different countries, I say, okay, boot campers, want to meet for dinner, and we all exchange readings and healings. It's really a community.
That's really cool.
That
Yeah,
goes
yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah.
As I said, I love the hands-on element of my work, but I also I love to read. I mean, I'm a compulsive reader.
Okay, so can you talk about any? I mean, I realize these are probably mostly public companies, but maybe private. Can you talk about any
public companies?
Can you talk about any of the predictions that were especially important?
Well, I mean, to a deal, all the predictions are important. I think some of the work I'm proudest of is I worked many decades ago with Dr. Larry Waits on new HIV drugs when HIV was new and they called it AIDS. I do a lot of pro bono work with medicine. I did charge him at the time. That wasn't pro bono. I think it became it. I hope so. I don't even remember. But my most publicized prediction, which was made completely by mistake, because I try not to make public predictions on air, was I predicted, I forget if it was 08 or 09, the stock market crash on air by accident. And also obviously to my clients, and sold all my holdings. So I had proof from my broker and from my trade that I had sold everything. But I did it. I was very tired. My impulse control was down, and they asked a question. I answered it without realizing I was answering it, and then it blew up. So that was one of my most talked about predictions. I would never do that on air because it's not really ethical. People can be wrong. What if I was wrong and some pensioner sold everything?
Totally. How long?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how often do you get it right, or how often do you get it wrong?
According to my companies, I'm mostly right because I have no information. I'm very wrong about myself. I'm wrong if I have too much information. I can be judgy instead of intuitive. I'm definitely not Guru Maharaji Day. But I think my mistakes with my companies are rare. But I will also say I'm not getting this, or I'm not getting this clearly. And I know nothing about the companies. I mean, I know very little, even the ones I worked with for 30 years. One is a firm that works with so many companies, even if I knew, I wouldn't be able to remember. Actually, both of them are fields that are impossible to know anything about, really. But I don't research it. It's all intuitive. They give me a target, just like I ask people, have a goal. And then you'll notice things come in from left field and you document them. I insist that my clients document my predictions because I also want to know if I'm wrong. It's an important thing to verify, to be able to prove or disprove. And those of you who go to psychics, if you're given information that you can't prove or disprove, like open your heart or drink more water. Like, why? Why should I believe you? Someone needs to give you a timeline. This has happened. This is happening. This will happen in a way that they couldn't have researched you.
So will you be able to give kind of a history that you couldn't have possibly researched? That
Yes.
Sort of that evidence.
That's what I do. I mean, I do it for my own benefit also because I want to know. The only difference between psychic and psychotic is that your information is right. And it's really important to stay on the right side of crazy.
Oh my God. You've got a future as a stand-up comic.
I would never, I have a chant I do. So when I teach, I love to teach. It's my favorite thing. And I'm very touchy. When I teach, I'm really in there and I'm reading everyone and I'm doing healing on it. I mean, I'm so in there when I teach. I love it, whether it's online or in person. However, when the students are still strangers, when I have to go up and stand in front of them, I have a little prayer I say, God, if you exist, and if you're going to end the world, say in the next 72 hours, could you please do it before I have to get on that stage? Amen. I am a true introvert. Then 2 minutes later, I love each of them. I see them clearly. I want to be part of their change in their life. But in that little space of time, and my husband always reminds me, but you love doing this. And I'm like, no, why did I even agree to it? No, I don't. I don't love it. And I don't want to do this. And I'm really uncomfortable. And this isn't going to be any good. 2 minutes in, I'm like, that I'm in
on fire.
But it doesn't matter because it doesn't make me feel any better about the next time.
Oh my gosh. Well, you are such.
Why we got married in our kitchen, because the idea of standing and saying I do in a tight dress before 600 people, that was not going to happen.
Well, you are just remarkable, Laura. Thank you so much for being on Getting Open.
All of you are remarkable. Don't forget it. The world may not be giving you that feedback. Do a little something different. If you're not appreciated, if you're not wanted, if you're not loved, if you're not included, you are in the wrong place. You are not the wrong person.
Ooh, I love that. That is a wonderful note to end on. Thanks so much, Laura. I look forward to seeing you in New York soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Was that counterintuitive? That was counterintuitive. Oh my God. I'm like, what's even happening? Oh, what a delight. I love Laura. Okay, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you loved this episode as much as I loved making it. As always, please follow and subscribe to make sure you don't miss another episode of Getting Open. And as always, I love hearing from you. You're always welcome to email me at gettingopen@yourtango.com. Your comments, wherever you're getting this podcast or video podcast, are so welcome. And if there are guests that you want me to have on the show, please let me know. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.